Well, this is pretty good timing with the news of the last 24 hours that one Tiger Woods has made his way to Augusta. What can you tell us about the chances that Tiger Woods might be able to play in the Masters next week?
Crazy how much that's changed. A week ago, I would have said zero chance. I mean, I just didn't see him progressing far enough from what we had seen in December. His comments at the Genesis Invitational back in February, where he just talked about all the things he has to go through. And then the fact that he was at Augusta National and actually preparing was quite the shock. There'd been rumblings that he's been trying to gear up, but to actually go there, I think elevates this. It escalates it a little bit more. I mean, that's taken a big leap now, the fact that he would want to actually play the course and walk it and test it out. And of course, I wish we could talk to him now and ask him how he feels, because I think that's the big question after that is, how do you feel? Because it's not just how you feel today. You're going to have to do it for 3 or 4 or 5 days. And, you're not going to have a day off in between. So you better feel like the next day you can do it again.
For those who haven't been to Augusta, just how physically grueling is it even just to walk that course?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, even for the guys who play golf all the time and are used to walking and playing, 5-6 rounds of golf a week, it takes it out of them. It's an exhausting place. I mean, there's probably, off the top of my head, 6 or 7 holes that have quite a bit of undulation where you're walking up or down hills even. I mean, even the downhill walks aren't going to be easy for Tiger, because they're steep and there's a lot of flexion in that ankle. On the front 9, there's a bunch of hills to go up. The back 9, not quite as many, but 18's a tough walk up the hill. It's not a flat golf course. Hardly any lie is flat. And that leads to issues with his stance, but it's more just the physical endurance of walking and the stress that will put on his foot and his ankle.
All right, let's talk about what I would imagine you consider a labor of love for you. The book that's coming out, Golf's Most Fascinating Rivalry, Tiger and Phil. As Jim Nantz says, every golf enthusiast will want to dive into this. How much enjoyment have you gotten diving into it yourself?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, actually. I mean, it's pretty much, I've kind of followed these guys for a good bit of their careers, and then to sort of dive into the weeds, going back into their early days when they were kids and how great they were as players when they were coming up. I mean, there's a lot of junior golfers, a lot of prodigies in all kinds of sports who never really pan out. And yet these guys went way beyond what anybody thought they would do. They obviously had a lot of hype as kids and as juniors and amateurs. Phil won a PGA Tour event as an amateur, the last guy to do so. Tiger won 3 straight U.S. amateurs, won 2 of his first 7 pro events. And then they just kind of went from there. And there was friction between the two. There was some animosity. There was an arm's length relationship. They looked leery at each other, and neither one really wanted to let the other guy get too close. And their careers intertwined a good bit. Tiger has a much better record, but Phil got his share of tournaments as well, especially compared to everybody else.
All right, and the timing of it, this is the 25th anniversary of Tiger winning at Augusta in 1997. Now that you can put that in a quarter century's worth of perspective, just how significant was that moment in American sports, you think?
Yeah, it was pretty big. I mean, he had a lot of hype, obviously, at that point. But if you look back, it's kind of crazy. He had been pro less than a year. He'd only played the Masters twice. The year before, as an amateur, he missed the cut. He did have a significant amount of attention going in, but then the way he won it, fell behind early, shot 40 for his first 9 holes, then climbed back into it, took the lead after the second round, and nobody could catch him. And, he won in such a huge manner, and yet everybody was glued to it. He won by 12 shots, like nobody could take their eyes off it. I mean, he was the first man of color to win the Masters, set records. 12-shot victory was a record. The lowest score ever, 270. Youngest. I mean, all these things, many of the records which still stand. And really kind of that was the point where, the Tiger Woods that became this huge phenomena really took off at that tournament. And it still probably ranks among his, it's hard to say which is his best of the 15 majors, but you'd have to probably put it among the top 2 or 3. And we could argue about the others. It's a great argument to have. I don't know that there's a right answer, but certainly that one's in the discussion.
And some would argue his last one 3 years ago at the Masters is right there at the top of the list, considering from what he has come back from. You've gotten to know Tiger so well. Just how big of a comeback. He described it to you as climbing Mount Everest. Was that?
Yeah, in a way that was his best victory. I think you can argue simply because he was at a totally different stage than he was in all the others. The others, maybe the first Masters he wasn't expected to win, although a lot of people thought he would. But every time after that, he was the guy, and it actually was disappointing when he didn't win a major. In 2019, he was in a much different place. He's 43 years old. He was only 2 years removed from that major back surgery. Yes, he had won the year before, but he didn't have the greatest form coming into the Masters. He really hadn't come close to winning a tournament. He had all these big guns to go up against. Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, they were right up there. Xander Schauffele was in the mix. Patrick Cantlay was in the mix. It was crazy. Tony Finau played with him in the last group. Molinari, who had beat him at the Open the year before, playing in the same group with Tiger, was with him again. And he managed for the first time ever to come back. He came back. He had never won a major trailing going into the final round. 2 shots back, ends up getting it done. And in many ways, that's his greatest win, given all that he went through to get there and the players he had to beat.
All right, the rivalry between Tiger and Phil. There's so many stories to tell, and you've capsulized on them all in this book. But one in particular, I want to ask you about: 2002 PGA Championship at Hazeltine, where Rich Beam won the major over Tiger Woods. He finished in second, and yet Tiger was upbeat coming off the course.
That is one of the stories that I had never heard. I mean, some of them I knew about and I investigated a little further, but I had never heard that one. And it really kind of points to some of the animosity or the friction between them, certainly going back at that time. And that the 2002 PGA, Tiger trailed Beam by 6 shots going into the back 9 on Sunday. Beam had this thing won. Tiger birdies the last 4 holes to make it interesting. Beam's on the 18th. He's got a 2-shot lead, but he has not won a tournament of that stature. He needs a bogey to get it in. He kind of is a little shaky, but he does coax in a little short bogey putt to win by 1. Tiger was in the group in front of him playing with Fred Funk. He's in the scoring area, had signed his scorecard, watches this play out on a TV monitor. And when it was over, he stood up and he sort of let out a yell like he had won or he was excited about the outcome. And Fred Funk looked at him like, Tiger, don't you just realize that he won? He made the putt. He beat you by a shot. And Tiger was like, don't care. That's Rich Beam 1, Phil Mickelson 0. And then he walked out. And it was just, an odd response, right? He was sort of relishing in the fact that sort of a guy who wasn't that heralded had a major and Phil didn't. Still, at that point, Tiger had 8. So, that was sort of what was going on behind the scenes between those guys.
All right. And fast forward 10 years later, Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and this relates to Cowboy fans out there. And we remember, Tiger and Tony Romo had a pretty close relationship. There were times we even captured video of Tiger out at Valley Ranch with Tony when he'd come to visit at the Cowboys practice facility. But the 2012 Pebble Beach Pro-Am, Jim Nantz invites Tony, and they weren't a team yet on CBS, invites him to his home there at Pebble Beach. Tell the story of Phil and Tiger paired on the last day. And of course, Tony Romo was Tiger Woods' playing partner, his amateur partner.
Right. Yeah. Tony was still playing in the NFL at that time. And, Nantz had them seated together. at his house that night, and Phil and Tony hit it off. You know, they had a nice time. They shared some stories. They had a bunch of laughs. And yet Tony knew that he was sort of sleeping with the enemy there. He was a little bit nervous about how that might be perceived if Tiger found out. And so he made sure to tell his wife, please don't say anything to Tiger. He kind of let it be known, we had a great time, but tomorrow I don't want. Sure enough, Phil couldn't wait to let it be known that Tiger to Tiger that him and Tony had hit it off. And basically during the round, as they're walking down like the second hole, Phil makes a big show, puts his arm around him. Hey, that was a great time last night. I'm so glad we got to talk. What a great party. And, you know, Tiger's over there fuming. And Romo basically is sheepishly trying to tell him, hey, look, you know, I was at Jim Nance's party. They put me by him. And you know, I think there was a little gamesmanship there. Phil's trying to get under Tiger's skin a little bit. And if that was the case, it worked, because Phil shot 64 that day and went on to win. Tiger shot 75, you know, not a great final day, beat him by 11 shots on the course. And obviously Phil went on to win the tournament. And it was just kind of a funny, again, another little instance of them sort of gnawing at each other.
So at what point in their careers do you think there was maybe the most animosity between Tiger and Phil?
It would have been probably around the time of the 2004 Ryder Cup, during that period. You know, kind of from 2001 in you know, probably for another 10, 12 years, until things mellowed after Tiger started to have his injury problems. The Ryder Cup was not a great idea to pair them together, at least in retrospect. They weren't going to be collaborative. Phil had finally won a major that year. He contended in all four. Tiger did not. He had the rare off year. And the last thing he wanted to do was give his rival, a guy who was starting to make up a little ground on him, any kind of confidence or any kind of comfort around him. He always wanted to sort of keep him at arm's length. And that's why that Ryder Cup went so bad for them. They lost both matches. The U.S. was annihilated in that Ryder Cup. And, you know, whether or not they should have been able to overcome that is another question. But the body language that they had, the reaction of other players, that they just weren't into it. And, you know, it turned out to be, they got a lot of criticism for it. So did Hal Sutton, the captain, who, you know, had every good intention when he put them together. It just did not work.
And where would you say their relationship is now? I mean, I go back to last May when Phil won the PGA at age 50. Tiger sent a congratulatory tweet out. Where are they now?
Well, I don't think it's like it was back in the day. You know, things mellowed a little bit. You know, Phil reached out to Tiger when Tiger was having all his chipping problems in 2015. Tiger disclosed that a couple of years later. He was actually really touched by that. Really meant a lot to him. They worked together on the Ryder Cup when Tiger was an assistant in 16, and again for the President's Cup in 17. So they kind of got collaborative then as they were trying to help the U.S. get better. They had that match in Las Vegas in 2018. Some of their friendliness, I think, was born out of business opportunity for that. They saw an opportunity. Now, lately, though, I don't know if Tiger's been reaching out to Phil in the light of all the recent problems. They're actually on different sides of that issue, where, you know, Phil was looking at the possibility of a rival golf league, and Tiger is clearly on the side of the PGA Tour. And so, again, now, whether or not they're really friendly at this point, I don't think so. I'm not. I would guess that Tiger has not been reaching out to Phil. And so, you know, we're sort of in this limbo again as to how they are amongst each other. And now, of course, Phil won't be at the Masters. So that just adds another element to that.
You know, the irony of that tweet from last year, which I think got around 125,000 likes, that might have put Tiger over the top for the $8 million Player Impact Program first prize. What do you think?
I don't think it hurt. It was good timing on his part. Yep.
All right. And finally, I want to ask you about one of our local products, Highland Park's own Scotty Sheffler, ranked number 1 in the world as of this week. Incredible
run he's on. You know, there's that saying, they say this a lot about young guys who are really talented. Once he gets that first win, that's going to be it. You know, he's going to take off. And that's exactly what's happened to him. He's now won 3 times in 6 weeks. and he's done it at completely different places. Phoenix is not the same as Bay Hill. Completely different golf courses, conditions. It's pretty benign weather in Phoenix, a lot of birdies. At Bay Hill for the Arnold Palmer Invitational, it was very tough conditions on the weekend, very hard golf course. He won at 4 under par, which is a very high winning score these days. And then he just wins the match play, which is a completely different format. You know, you got to, it's one-on-one for the whole thing. And he got through that and pushed him to number 1 in the world. Very, very quick rise to number 1 from the time he got in the top 10 just a couple months ago. So, you know, now the key for him is, can he keep it going? You know, can he keep his momentum going? Because this last stretch has had to have taken something out of him. It's incredible to be in contention that often and to perform that well.
Can he win a major, either Masters or, you know, he says his favorite course is Southern Hills next month, the PGA, or in May, the PGA.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a great spot for him. I would think his game would translate very well to Augusta National. You know, I just wonder if this is all too much right now. You know, we don't see guys win the Masters very often who just won in March. It's very rare. It seems like the form is more subtle going into Augusta. It's not so much winning form. Obviously, he's playing really well. Can he keep it going for another week? Why not? If he can, then certainly he's got a great chance. It doesn't hurt to help to like a golf course like Southern Hills, which a lot of guys won't have played. So that's an advantage for him, and probably more his style, of course, in terms of how the type of course where he grew up.
Bob, we appreciate it. Golf's most fascinating rivalry. It sounds like a fascinating read.
Thanks very much, Bill.